Hello, I am here today to talk to you about my avocado plant right here. So the botanical name for this is the Persea Americana. I did not know that, I only just looked it up just now, but most people will recognize it and know it for its fruit, which is the avocado. I actually don't like avocados, but after seeing a couple of people growing avocado plants from seed, I thought I would give it a go. So this is one of the plants that I didn't actually buy. I grew it from seed, and the process is pretty simple, but I will go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. So I've had this for about 6 months, I want to say, maybe a bit shorter than that. If I'm lying, I will correct myself now. Yes, I was lying. At the time of filming, it had actually been 4 months, and at the time of editing, it has now been 5 months. Okay. And so far, it's been pretty easy to look after. Doesn't really get super dramatic with mist watering or with overwatering, etc. I've had it in kind of two main stages. One was in water when it was growing, mostly its roots, but then the shoots started to come out. And then once the roots were quite long, I then transferred it into soil, which is where it is now. And since then, a lot more leaves have come out. It's currently in a terracotta pot, just a very simple, basic one from any garden centre. And this is actually my only plant in terracotta, but I'm actually a big fan, and I'm hoping to eventually maybe have all my plants in terracotta. The only thing is, of course, because plants dry out faster when they're in terracotta, that would mean that I have to water more frequently, and I don't really know how I feel about that. I like to travel and go away for like a week or two at a time, so if all my plants were in terracotta, not really the vibe, but I like the look. I quite like the look of like when it develops all of the mineral deposits on the outside. I don't know, I think it looks cool, particularly in the garden, but I don't, this is an indoor plant, but anyway. So I keep this in my bathroom next to my banana plant. So if you watched that video, then you know what I've said about that space before. But the summary is, it is pretty well lit from about 5 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the moment, because it's summer, and then in the winter it's usually, so that's about 6 hours of light, and now in the winter it's usually about 4, and it's not really direct sunlight, so it kind of ranges, but it's done well there since I put it there. I water this plant roughly once a week. It varies a lot, but the point being, I don't let it go dry for an extended period of time. So it's fine for it to be dry, but if it is dry, I will then water it. And when I say dry, I mean completely dry. I can check if it's completely dry, one, by sticking my fingers in the soil and checking, but also by lifting the pot, seeing how heavy it is, and then I can usually tell pretty easily from there, because it's quite small, and I know what the weight of it is when it's completely dry compared to when it's completely moist, or moist. I know when it needs to be watered just by picking it up. And again, because it's in my bathroom, I see it literally every day, so I can usually tell by the color of the soil when it's nearing that time, and then I just double confirm by just picking it up or putting my finger in the soil, and then I know to water it. As I will probably say for all of my plants, my technique at the moment is always to water completely thoroughly, and then just do that with whichever frequency then that plant needs. I'm not really in the business of like a bit of water here, a bit of water there. I just think that that is kind of time consuming, at least for me. And I don't want to have to do stuff with my plants literally every single day of the week, or really ideally any more frequently than once a week. So that's not really how I would structure my watering if I can kind of manipulate it, which is effectively what I can do by choosing the pot type, the soil type, and how much water you put in each pot. But it's also easier because I don't have to think about how much water I'm putting into the pot. I just put as much until it's clearly saturated and soaked through, let it run out, and then that's done. and that also helps if I need to give instructions for anyone else who's looking after my plants when I'm away, because I don't have to explain to them how much water to put in and try and get them to like pick up the intuition of knowing how much water the plant needs. I just think that from where I am right now, this is the best way of doing it. Water it thoroughly, and then water it with whatever frequency you need to match the fact that you're watering it thoroughly. This plant, because I grew it from seed, I put the only soil that it's ever had in it when it was put in the spot. If I remember correctly, I just used regular houseplant soil. No, I did not remember correctly. In fact, I actually used cactus and succulent soil. That wasn't my intention. I had meant to use houseplant soil, but I got distracted whilst I was potting and got confused. But in the end, it worked out fine because the plant is doing fine. Since I've had it in the terracotta, the roots at the time I think were about this deep when I put it in this pot, and since then the roots have gone all the way to the bottom and actually poked out the bottom. But I'm not ready to repot it, I'm not gonna lie. So I just tucked the roots back in the pot. I'll see if I can I? You can't really see, can you? Kinda can, yeah. So I don't want to spill the soil. You can see some roots in there, so you can't tell, but one of them came out of the bottom, and I just tucked it back in, and it's now growing into the pot again. Eventually it'll get to a point where either the roots will come out the top, or another root will go down and come out the bottom, and I think maybe then that's when I'll repot it. Or if I'm repotting something else and it just fits with my schedule, I'll get to it. But because this is a dire situation, I'm not really that bothered. And I'm not trying to repot like every week. When you have, I would say, more than about 5 plants, you could find yourself repotting probably like twice a month, and I'm not trying to do that. Repotting is not as daunting as it seems. Like when I first had to repot, I was very nervous. Looking back, I don't really know why, but I just was. It's not actually that big a deal, but it's just one of those things where you put it off for as long as you can, and then you do everything that needs doing at once. So I don't know, I'm sure there's some people who like don't do their laundry for ages and then do a massive batch. And that's me specifically with ironing. I will like put everything in a big basket until that basket is full, or I really need to wear something that I really want to wear. Then I iron everything. I can't be ironing every single day or doing laundry every 2 days. Like, it's just a bit long. So this is what works for me. Okay, now let me explain how I actually grew this from a seed for those who are curious. Literally all you need to do is get an avocado that you get from any supermarket or wherever you buy avocados. I know, not me, I don't like avocados, but you know, people who do like them love to do their trick of like cutting it around and then like twisting it and whatever. The only thing that you need to change from that process is to try and avoid actually cutting into the seed as you're going around. So cut very close to it and then kind of twist it apart, and then try and preserve the seed and don't actually mark it. Now, I think a small scratch or whatever is going to be fine. It's not going to affect the ability for this to turn into a real plant, but don't like properly stab it. You want it to be as intact as possible. Then you put it in a Ziploc bag with a damp paper towel and put it pretty much anywhere. You can put it on a windowsill, in a cupboard, it doesn't really matter. Let it germinate. Eventually you'll see the seed starts to crack and then a root comes out, and then at that point you can either put it directly in soil, or what I did was I put it in water. I did that because I kind of wanted to see the roots grow, and I also wanted to make sure that it was going to be like established and fine before I put it into soil. So that's why I chose to do that. Whilst it was in water, it then sent up the shoot, and the shoot came out quite pale, and then it starts to darken, and then the leaves start to come after. So the leaves start coming from the very top. And then here we are now. I don't actually know the timeline of all of this, but if I figure out from pictures, I will document that probably somewhere on the screen, here perhaps. And this is essentially a free plant. If you're someone who already buys avocados, someone you live with buys avocados, a free plant. That's also kind of why I grew it, because in theory it was going to be free, and other people in my house do like avocados. So I was like, don't throw that away. I'm going to grow something from that, and here we are. If you want an actual in-depth explanation as to how to grow avocados from seed, I will put a link to somebody else's tutorial in the description, because I don't have a step-by-step tutorial, and I think I'm not quite confident that the way I did it was the correct way or the best way or whatever, but there are so many great videos which I learned from, so I think it's better for me to direct you there, at least now, because I don't really have any special information to add compared to what they said. Okay, now let's talk about the growth structure of this. As you can see, I will try and make it more obvious. Yeah. So, as you can see, actually, let me show you a close-up of the seed itself. So, I quite like the seed. I think it adds to the uniqueness of this kind of plant. So, I kept the seed above the soil, but you can bury it if you want to. But I put it on top. So, as you can see here, if it will focus, yeah, the main stem or stalk, I'm not sure if it's a stalk or a stem, but whatever, it comes from the seed in the crack, and then it grows one main stem. I want this to focus on the plant, not on me. One main stem, and then from there grows each individual leaf on one leaf at a time from each, whatever this is called. I don't know if this is a petiole or a stem, but whatever this is, each leaf comes and only one leaf comes from each of those. I will show you a close-up of the leaf if it will focus. That's what I'm going to get out of the frame for a second so it will focus. That is what a leaf looks like, and that's just a replica. This is what the top looks like. So you can see actually there are two leaves coming out. Whoa, this is not in frame. There we go. There are two leaves coming out of, this is very difficult, two leaves coming out of the top at the moment, and when the new leaves come out, they come out quite shiny like this one, and then eventually they fade to like this one, to be less shiny and more matte. Okay, my arm is tired. Not from carrying this, I'm not a weakling, it's because I exercised and I went quite hard yesterday. Can you see how sweaty I am? It's because we're currently experiencing a heat wave in the UK. So let's just, in fact, I'm gonna put the fan on, just give me a second. Okay, I am back and I'm a little bit cooler, although I accidentally managed to turn on the heat setting for a bit, and that was a bit traumatizing, but I'm okay. Right, so what was I gonna say? Yes, I wanted to talk about the growth behavior of this plant. So like I mentioned, when it sprouts, it's one stalk, and that stalk has sort of the beginnings of some small leaves at the very tip, and then as it grows there are also very tiny additional leaves along the main stem, and those eventually start to grow. So I think what happened first was, as it was growing upwards, it was kind of, so let's say I need to get like I need to get something to demonstrate with to do this. Okay, so let's say, okay, I'll use this. Let's say this is the top of the leaf, and what happens was, if my hand is the seed, this is quite difficult. Okay, as it was kind of coming out of the top of the seed, let's say there was a small leaf here. As it was getting taller, this leaf was now starting to grow outwards, and then as it got taller there was a small leaf here that started to grow outwards, and then eventually the ones on the top also started to grow outwards. So like as we have here, these would have started as small leaves on the sides, and then these ones came out of the top as well. Now at the moment it's kind of stopped growing like that, if I'm understanding its growth correctly, and instead of it growing longer, it's growing each new leaf out of the top and then extending and then growing a new leaf at the top, but the bottom leaves are the tiny leaves are no longer growing into big leaves. I don't know if that's too much analysis of the growth pattern, but it's kind of interesting to me. Not all of the baby leaves turn into full leaves, and as you can see, well, you can't see, but I will show you. This leaf here has actually just gone brown, this baby leaf that never actually grew into a full leaf. I don't know if that's my fault, but I will talk about the problems I had with this plant in a second. Other points about the growth behavior of this plant are the fact that it leans towards the light. You may be able to tell if I tilt it maybe like this-ish. You can see that the stem is a little bit wonky, particularly here. It goes that way and then it zigzags that way. And again, I think if I do it sort of like that, you can see it sort of curves a bit. That's because it grows towards the light, and then if you don't rotate it, the stem will actually grow in that direction, and it doesn't correct. It's not like I don't have an example of another plant, but a lot of plants that are used for flowers in gardening and landscaping, those plants will literally, their entire body will move towards the light, and then it will follow the light throughout the day like this. But the stem is more malleable, whereas this, it grows in that direction, and until you correct it, then it will grow. So let's say it was growing this way because the light's here, it grows this way, then you reposition it so the light is over here, and from that point onwards, it will then grow that way, but it will have that kink in it. So it's something to be aware of if you particularly want your plants to grow perfectly vertical. And you can even see now it's facing me, so the light's kind of in here. So if I wanted to balance it, I'd flip it so the light was here. Obviously, I'm not flipping the actual sun, I am just rotating the plant like this. But it's just something to keep in mind if you care about that in the style of the plants. I kind of do and don't. With this one, I just kind of rotate it when I notice it's really leaning. But I have another plant which I will talk about in another video, which I was quite hell-bent on making sure it grew directly vertical, and we will see whether or not I succeeded with that at a later date. Okay, let's talk about the problems I have had with this plant. Not really anything major. The only issues I've had was all of the bottom leaves. So there was one here, here, and here, and then I can kind of still see the lower ones that are still there, plus this one here. They all suddenly went brown at the same time, and I didn't know why. It happened, I think, about a week or two ago, which coincides with when the temperature in the UK just shot up out of nowhere. We were in summer, but that summer did not actually start to summer until last week. And so suddenly it was really hot, and then everyone was freaking out, or I was freaking out. I was enjoying it, but it was a bit uncomfortable because I was not used to it being so hot. Oh, this leaf is very interesting shape. Whoa. Okay, I'm going to show you a clip so you can see what I'm looking at. It's not pointed. All of the other leaves are pointed, and this one is kind of like this shape, like an M. That's so random. Nature, am I right? I might cut that out, that's so cringe. What was I saying? Yes, okay. So when it got hot, they all went brown, and I don't know why, but I'm not too worried because obviously the rest of the leaves are still fine and it's still photosynthesizing and whatnot. So I think it's still okay, but I just didn't know what happened or why it did that. But they can't talk, so you can't ask them. So far I've had no pests with this plant, but I would imagine it is susceptible to any of the most common houseplant pests. So fungus gnats, spider mites, thrips, scale, mealybugs. I've only actually in general had experiences with fungus gnats, and that was actually very recent as well. So I I only speak on pests with like a very light authority because I've not actually had to deal with them myself. As for fungus gnats, all I've been doing is bottom watering, and I'm trying that mostly because my sister has a plant, that Ficus elastica rug tree, which had fungus gnats, and she bottom watered it for about 2 or 3 months, and then they were gone. She actually now only bottom waters it, and I think it's because she's a bit traumatized from the fact that there were just like insects in her space, which I feel that like it's not cute to just have insects just around, especially when they clearly live there. It's different when you open the window and a fly comes in, but you can get that fly out, and typically they won't actually like survive that long indoors. If you didn't open the doors or windows again for like a week or two, it would die. Whereas fungus gnats, they literally like this is where they live, this is their new home, you know. So having them is not cute. But at the moment, I've been bottom watering and I've had no issues since I started doing that. So I will update on that if they return. But until I actually have an issue or deal with pests myself, I probably won't speak very much on pest issues with plants, because I'd like to talk about my own experience with a dash of my knowledge from other people's videos and other like literature that I've read. Sorry, who am I lying? Who am I lying to? I have not read any botanical literature. So essentially, yes, other people's videos and Instagram captions. But nonetheless, I've not had any pests with this plant, and I won't speak it into existence. I will not. Okay, so I have said everything I have to say about this plant. Hopefully this will encourage you or ginger you to perhaps try growing an avocado plant yourself. Like I said, all you need is a seed from either yourself or someone else who lives near you or with you who eats avocados, and you can get a plant out of it rather than throwing it in the bin. Maybe I should have said that you don't actually have to put it in soil, you can just put it in water. So I have a friend who is growing an avocado completely in water. I will insert a picture here with their permission. Imagine if I did this and there's just no picture because there's no permission. And it can get, the reason I'm showing the picture is because I can show you how big they can get in just water. I will also link a video below where a video I watched about growing avocados in water for, I think the person grew it for maybe up to like 3 years, and they were discussing whether or not you can grow them indefinitely in water. I believe the conclusion was you can, but at a point the growth will stop because it's not getting any nutrients. But I am curious to know that if that's the case, then if you added fertilizer to the water, would that suffice and give it enough to then continue to just grow, or will it still be capped because it's in water as opposed to soil? I'm not entirely sure. But remember, the root that comes out of the seed is just one main root, and from there you have offshoots. But it's not quite as extensive as some other plants that I've seen where they have like roots for days. This one is pretty much like one and then some offshoots, but it's not like the roots are that prevalent, or what's the right word? GCSE English is like flashing through my brain. The roots are not that like prolific, that's the word, prolific. If you don't know what that word means, word of the day, here's the definition. Excellent. Okay, so you get a word of the day, and now you're going to get some music, a song of the day, if you will. It's not really a recommendation, actually. None of these are recommendations. They're just songs that I want to talk about. And the song in question is Começa, and that is by an artist called Pongo. Pongo is an Angolan Portuguese artist. I believe she now lives in Lisbon and was raised or born in Angola, but I could be wrong. Where did I discover Pongo? I don't remember. I imagine one of my friends who I met in Lisbon put me on. I was actually supposed to see her live roughly this time last year at a festival in Portugal, but of course that's when I got COVID, of course. So I did not get to see her. But she is coming to London in October, so I will see her there. And if you're going to be there, I will see you there. I'm really excited. Back to the song Começa, which, if I'm translating it correctly, it means start or begin, and it's, I think, in the imperative tense, so it's an instruction. And the are we going to start putting Portuguese? Why not? Okay. I think the line like in the chorus goes Começa, começa, começa que ele tá cabo, which means like start what you have finished. Which actually, now that I say that in English, it seems like in the wrong order. But maybe my Portuguese isn't that good. Hey, I don't know. But great song, very good for getting you hyped. Particularly, like, I usually listen to that song either on the way to or on the way back from the gym, to just, because I don't know if it's just me. I like to get hyped on the way to, but I love like continuing the high after exercising by playing hype music on the way home. So I can listen to it either or. But I also had it as my alarm for a bit. I go back and forth. I liked having it as my alarm because it got me like hyped and I was like alert. But then also, any song that you make your alarm, you start to associate with the feeling of just like waking up. So after a while I changed it because I didn't like that every time I heard the song I had the feeling of just having woken up, and I didn't really like that, so I changed the song. Anyway, nobody asked, so I'm gonna stop. Thank you for watching, and I will see you when I have another plant to talk about.